Well, today finds me in south central Connecticut. I'm going to be doing a hike today on what's called the New England Trail. The New England Trail is a national scenic trail that goes from the Long Island Sound and also from the Connecticut River. It has two branches in south central Connecticut here that meet and form the Mattabesett Trail, and that becomes the Metacomet Trail. So that's what I'm actually on today. The New England Trail is a combination of the Mattabesett, the Metacomet, and the Metacomet-Monadnock Trail once it's in Massachusetts. So it's a trail with its own name, but it actually uses other trails. So we're going to do a sample of that New England Trail today, about a 5 or 6 mile section. We're on section 14 of the New England Trail here, and we're in the hanging hills of south central Connecticut. And the prize today will be ascending Castle Craig and West Peak, which is just to my west here. I'm on a little side trail off the New England Trail here. And we're going to join the New England Trail with its blue blazes at the north end of this reservoir here, just around the corner here, and follow it along the crests of the hanging hills. And yes, Castle Craig is a stone structure straight ahead there, and the trail goes right by it. It follows the tops of these cliffs from what I've heard. I haven't actually hiked this section of it. I have hiked the section over Bluff Head a couple years ago. That's on this channel, and I've also done Fowler and Pistapog Mountains on that stretch of trail as well. So the New England Trail is not new to me, but I'm recording it as the New England Trail today, and we're doing a sample section of, this is basically the middle 6 miles of section 14. We're not going to do the whole section 14, but the middle half of it. And we'll be out here all afternoon admiring the views from these ridge tops, looking at plants, looking at animals if we see any, and looking at the fascinating geology of south central Connecticut here. This rock layer that forms the cap of these ridges is continuous from Long Island Sound all the way up to Mount Tom and beyond in Massachusetts. So the New England Trail often follows this cap rock, and you get views on many sections of this trail. It'd be hard to find a section of the New England Trail that doesn't have great views. So let's get started here. We got a perfect fall day. It's cool in the 30s, but great visibility today. We should be able to see all the way across to Long Island to our south, and we can already from this vantage. And we're going to be even higher in elevation when we get up on Castle Craig and West Peak. And before we leave this lookout and join the New England Trail on the ridge just west of here, I'm going to introduce a few plants that I think I might find on the New England Trail today, but if we don't, let's look at them because they're pretty interesting. And some plants follow these ridges north and cannot tolerate really cold weather, but can find microhabitats that suit their needs, including post oak. It's found on West Rock Ridge and East Rock Ridge just south of here in New Haven. And there may be some up here, but I haven't seen any yet. And those post oaks follow their way north. This bearberry, which is the shiny plant that's a ground cover right here, is actually a lot more common to our north. Often grows on rock ledges and sand dunes. It's pretty common in eastern New England and up into Canada, but it's happy on this ledge here. Another plant that I have found over in southern Rhode Island, where I found a lot of bearberry in the past, is this common juniper, which is considered a tree, but it often takes a shrub form, and it's very prickly to the touch. You wouldn't want to walk through a patch of it. It can grow sideways for many feet like a tree that's actually laying down, and it's very closely related to our eastern red cedar, which is also found on this ridge right here. But it has a needle that's quite unique. It has a white line down the back of it. Almost looks like a hemlock needle to the untrained eye. Those white lines are being backlit right there. So interesting habitats on these ledges. North meets south in this area. Some animals that don't come much further north than here. Some fence lizards and copperhead snakes do make their home on these rocky ledges. Be aware of that in the warmer months. Won't be a concern today though. You stay on the main trails, you're probably not going to see them, but if you venture off trail like I've done right now, you definitely want to watch where you're putting your feet. Copperhead snakes are not aggressive, but they do blend in perfectly and they're hard to see. So as long as you don't tread on them, they're not going to strike at you. And I did follow the Red Blaze side trail to get to that overlook off the New England Trail. The New England Trail section I'm doing is going to be between Connecticut Route 71, which is just to our east, about a half mile, up over Castle Craig and West Peak, and we're going to finish today's hike on what's called Edgewood Road. And Edgewood Road is only about a half mile from where this reservoir is up here. So I actually parked there and walked backwards to get on this section of trail on the road. So backtracked a little, and then I'm going to do like a 5-mile loop. And basically it's a loop enough that we don't actually have to backtrack on the trail to see all the trail. We can do 5 miles in the woods and only had a half a mile of road walking to connect those 2 points. So we'll look at the map of the New England Trail here when we're done today. And it is available for printing. I've got it downloaded on my tablet with good cell service around here. I didn't take the time to print it off today, but if there wasn't good cell service around here, that would be a wise idea. So in more remote areas, it's definitely a good idea to always have a paper copy, or at least it downloaded into the memory of your mobile device. But this is the Metacomet Trail here by name. New England Trail is a scenic trail that's a combination of these trails, and you do see signs and symbols for the New England Trail occasionally along the Blue Blaze, Metacomet, and Mattabesset trails in Connecticut. But you don't want to be looking for those as you hike. You want to be looking for those solid blue colors. If it's a different color, like the red trail we just did, or blue with yellow or white with the stripe. So if the stripe's half blue and half white, or half yellow, or even half red, you're on a side trail. And these are all well-maintained trails. Connecticut Forest and Park Association has done a great job establishing these trails and maintaining them over the years. We'll keep hiking. Well, the shadows are long even at noontime in the late fall. Late fall often equates to cloudy and stormy weather, but this November has been especially clear, and after a summer with lots of haze from the wildfires in Canada, this excellent visibility is much appreciated. So New England Trail continues across the dam of this reservoir here, and it hangs a left and up this ridge on the right side of this lake to some overlooks. So we'll be following that and enjoying a perfect fall day for hiking. So let's just see what kind of views we can get from the top by Castle Craig. I'm pretty certain we can see Long Island and maybe even points beyond in eastern and southwestern Connecticut. And we've come about 3/4 of a mile from the dam there on that reservoir. And these woods are open. You really don't need a trail for most of it, but there are some crags and valleys that are quite rocky with big piles of this trap rock here. That's the name of the basalt or lava flows that form these ridges. So open woods, but there's places where it's kind of requires some mountain goat skills to get up the piles of loose rock. And the trail has done a pretty good job of avoiding most of the loose rock, but definitely a mountain to do with hiking boots and nothing less. There's places where it's quite rocky and you need the extra support to keep your feet under you and not from sliding sideways or backwards, especially with these oak leaves. A lot of oak on this mountain, a lot of oak leaves that are slow to decay in November, and can make it especially slippery. Well, we're coming to our first view, looking back to where we started today, just in the background there. And we'll start naming off some landmarks as I can identify them here. The views are going to be almost continuous for a while here. And I don't have the name of this reservoir memorized. I think it's called the Mirror. Begins with an M. I'll look it up next time I record the view from one of these ledges here, but that is a water supply reservoir, probably for the city of Meriden, which is just behind the ridge where we started today's video, which is right over here, which sure looks a lot like the one we're on now from looking from the other direction, with all those talus slopes. And the city of Meriden is right back there. And I think the sleeping giant is blocking most of the view of Long Island Sound, but I can see a little bit of it way back there. So the sleeping giant is directly to our south. I recorded on sleeping giant this last spring for barking up the right tree. I was up there the whole day doing spring tree identification. A lot of trees were in flower that week, including a lot of the oaks. So the head and chin of the sleeping giant are on the right of the screen here, and then what looks like somebody laying down is to the center of the screen, and directly behind it is Long Island Sound, and you can see the North Shore of Long Island, at least I can. And we're getting near the limits of what this camera can do, but a couple of the taller buildings in New Haven are visible as well. And we'll look the other direction from this next ledge, and that is the Mirror Reservoir. I just looked it up. I see more of that bearberry right back here on this ledge. Actually, it's right here too. A little bit hard to see with the lighting today. It's all over these ledges. Don't think I've seen it on Sleeping Giant or West Rock Ridge, but it's here quite commonly in the hanging hills here. Again, that's a northern visitor. And boy, what a great place for views. So we're looking due east now. This is called South Mountain here where we started today's hike. There's one lone Norway maple tree there. Boy, Norway maple is not a native tree, but when you get near areas with a lot of houses, it becomes native. It seeds in along trails that have, you know, a lot of people going along them. Seeds itself in along the roads. So, looks a lot like sugar maple, but holds its leaves longer, gets them earlier, and loses them later. And that one's got some great color. Over the top of South Mountain here, I believe, is Mount Higbee, which is clearly visible from Interstate 91. There's a rest area right at the western side of it. And I believe just to the north of that is Lamentation Mountain. I've only hiked a little bit of Mount Higbee one time, a long time ago. Just a short hike to the first overlook. And Lamentation Mountain I've never hiked. So those are two that are on the New England Trail. It follows the crests of a lot of these ridges around here that I would be interested and probably will record for this channel as time allows. And we've come up quite a bit higher than that last overlook. We can actually see over South Mountain now and get a better view of Mount Higbee. And we can see kind of over the Sleeping Giant a little better as well. So let's add to the view we've already looked at here. Sleeping Giant is due south here. There's the head and the body. And then an obvious view of the skyscrapers of downtown New Haven, Long Island Sound, and the North Shore of Long Island. And right behind these eastern red cedar trees, which are pretty common along this cliff edge. And boy, they're gnarled and twisted, and they may be quite a bit older than they look, living on this ledge here. So behind South Mountain there, we can see pretty much the whole length of Mount Higbee now. So the first set of cliffs is South Mountain. Mount Higbee goes for quite a distance, probably 3 or 4 miles of almost continuous cliffs behind that. And this grass that covers these open areas on these ridges is often found in old field situations where the soil has been kind of wore out and no longer fertile. This is called poverty grass, and grows where a lot of other plants can't, and it sure is pretty in the wintertime when it gets backlit on a day like today. So we're getting some more views of the Sleeping Giant directly to our south here. And legend has it, Native American legend has it, that the Sleeping Giant was a walking, talking giant, and became very angry and stomped on the Connecticut River and diverted its course eastward near Middletown, and had to go through some much harder rocks to get to the ocean, which is true, and was given a spell to calm it down, and it's been sleeping ever since. Geologically, it's very similar to where we're standing right now, but you know, every culture has its explanation of how things came to be, and that's the explanation that the natives of this area showed what was obviously the shape of a human being lying down. Even they could see that from these ledges. These ledges have always had views. There are no man-made clearings here. This is all nature. And that's what makes this New England Trail so great. It follows these trap rock ridges for miles and miles and gives you almost continuous views for many miles of a hike. On a day this clear, it sure is special. And there's many places where you can get your own little private lookout here. There's a lot of these little knolls or precipices that stick out from the main cliff here. So on a really busy day, if you want your own lookout, you could probably find one. We're getting real close to the Castle Craig, and that's a popular hiking destination. And you can also drive up there during the warmer months. I think the gate is closed for the winter in mid-November here. You can see it back up there behind these trees. And we'll get a better look at that in just a few minutes. And we'll take one last look at the view from the summit of Castle Craig. And the actual highest point in the Hanging Hills is just to our west. Boy, this basalt has some interesting veins in it of harder minerals that resist erosion. Pretty common to see this. Pretty interesting looking too. Just to our west, behind these red cedar trees, is West Peak. And we have to go down into a notch and descend about halfway down the mountain and then climb it all over again. And there's a lot of radio towers up there, but not a road that you can drive up. So we'll take a look at the view on the way up there and the view from the top. And after leaving Castle Craig, we go down a crag between Castle Craig and West Peak, and then start climbing right back up the south side of West Peak. And you lose about 300 feet, and then we're going to gain about 400 feet. We're getting some views. We're getting a close-up look at these talus slopes, and we're going to get a real neat look at the underside of these cliffs. There's some right above here, just barely in view. So they routed the trail this way maybe to give you a better appreciation of the geology of this mountain. And I'm going to just zoom in on a tree here. Did a lot of work with on my other channel this year. And that's our American basswood, growing right on this talus slope. A little hard to see, but there's still some bracts, B-R-A-C-T-S, hanging from the branches. And the fruits, which are about the size of a blueberry. There's one right there. The bract looks like a banana peel almost, and the blueberry type seed is right underneath it. It all falls to the ground as one piece, and whirly birds its way down to disperse the seeds away from the parent tree. But boy, there's a lot of basswood on these hikes in the Trap Rock Ridges. And there's some right there. The bracts look like almost like banana peels hanging off the branches. So pretty common on these hikes. Basswood requires a soil that's higher in nutrients than the oaks and hickories, so it's only found in certain types of rock. If you get in areas with a lot of schist and gneisses and quartzites, you just don't see as much of it. And we got another lone basswood tree there growing right out of this rock pile. And we're getting out to where it's wide open rocks. Hardly any trees at all right here. So it's a pretty interesting experience. Not too often the trails go over these talus areas. Usually they're either above or below them. But we're in the middle of it here. And just beyond those trees is some cliffs near the top of West Peak. And just beyond these trees here are more cliffs. So this is an interesting viewpoint, and you know, I think they route the trails to give you the best understanding of what's here, and don't always take the straightest or easiest route to do that, but give you a much better appreciation of what there is to see on these mountains. And we've almost regained all that elevation we had lost, and did it in a very interesting fashion. Boy, they really did a great job of routing this trail where there's just so much to look at, especially if you're interested in geology and plants. Got all kinds of hop hornbeam growing up here. It's actually one of the more common understory trees on this entire hike. It's got a real shaggy bark. And plenty of views of these cliffs as we climb up through this notch. And just a little bit of basswood growing right here. It's got these beautiful red buds all winter long. They are not the same shape as a red maple, but just as bright as a red maple. So just a little bit, they're not quite symmetrical. One side bulges out more than the other. The leaves get quite large on these, 6-8 inches across, with a real jagged edge. Well, at over 1,000 feet in elevation, West Peak is the highest point in south central Connecticut. And for that reason is essential really for radio, television, and cellular communications. I had no doubt my phone would work here because I knew these towers were up here. Well, we've got a different view now. These ledges aren't quite as expansive as far as the view goes as from Castle Craig, but interesting nonetheless, and a little more secluded since there's no road up here, at least not a road you can drive up. There is a road that accesses these towers for the workers. We're looking northwest here towards Bristol. These are the ledges, the summit ledges of West Peak in the foreground here. And I'm not sure what that white tower is. I know ESPN has their headquarters there in Bristol. And the shadow of the mountain there is where Lake Compounce is. So you can't really see that from here, but that's about where it is. And in the shadow of the mountain right here, this is where a few weeks later the snow would show up on the ski trails of Mount Southington. Again, I kind of know where they are. Pretty hard to make out right now in this video. And then distant views beyond that to the Litchfield Hills. There's hills that are higher than this first ridge, probably 50-60 miles away, approaching 2,000 feet in elevation when you get out towards Canaan, and over 2,000 feet when you get to Salisbury area. And on a day this clear, anything that can be seen from this mountain you will see. There is nothing to stop it. So what a great afternoon. We got about 2 miles left on the Metacomet Trail to complete this section, or my section of section 14 of the New England Trail. I got to stop and eat lunch and get those miles behind me in the next hour and a half. So we'll probably stop recording at this point and take time to wrap up the hike and look at the map when we get closer to the end. But these are the shortest days of the year, and sunset is about 4:15. So we got to respect that and get some miles behind us. We've seen most of the views at this point and plenty of other things of interest. And boy, the views on West Peak got much better once you pass those radio towers. So I wrapped up the West Peak summit much earlier than I should have. The trail continues along these ridge top on the ledges facing west. And you can still see Bristol, Connecticut. I'll have to figure out what that tower is before I do the final edit on this video. I'll put the name above it once I figure out what it is. And looking north, we can see up into Massachusetts. That mountain directly in front of us there's a large white building on the right side of it. That's Talcott Mountain. It's almost as high as where we're standing right now. And I don't believe this is called the Metacomet Ridge that we're following, and the Metacomet Trail. I don't believe it surpasses 1,000 feet again until you get up to Mount Tom, which is in the center of the screen there. So these ridges you're looking at and have looked at from all these vantage points are where this New England Trail goes, and for a lot of reasons. Partly because it's very scenic, partly because it's undeveloped, because it's so rocky, and the valleys around here do have a lot of suburban and urban areas. But that's what makes this trail so special. It's so close to thousands and thousands of people, but yet has incredible scenic value. Well, we're just a few hundred yards from the road now, and I'd like to wrap up today's adventure. As you can see, the sun is already set on this side of the mountain, at least. So, got to be careful in November. Boy, does it go down quick. I'm going to show on my tablet here the resources available to help you with finding your way on the New England Trail. And we are full screen. So that shows the entire course of the New England Trail through Connecticut and Massachusetts. In Connecticut, it actually starts in two different places. One is just southeast of Middletown, right on the banks of the Connecticut River, and the other is right in Guilford on the beaches of Long Island Sound. The two meet right at a place called Broomstick Ledges. I've hiked through there, but I wasn't recording that day. And right near there is Bluff Head, which I did record at a couple years ago. That was a loop hike. I wasn't on the New England Trail for the entire walk. And today we're right up here where this little loop is, so I could make a day hike without having to backtrack. So the resources they have for you for planning is you push the legend, and if you click on section hikes, and the parking icon is pretty helpful too, and then start zooming in, you can decide which section of the trail you want to try to do. The section hikes themselves are quite long for a day hike unless you have a whole day available and a shuttle vehicle or a bicycle or something to get you back to where you started, or if you want to do some backpacking. But today's section here, this little green symbol here, is section 14, and I can push more details to get a more detailed map of this section. I was also using All Trails as well, and the Connecticut Forest and Park Association maps to plan today. And this gives you a description of what's here. And in yellow is the actual section that is, I think it's 11.5 miles if you do the whole thing, point to point. There's also a green dotted trail there that is a good way to make a loop if you wanted to for several days. Today I actually started right near, the symbol there is for roadside parking. This is on it's called Englewood Road, and there's room for about 7 or 8 cars there. I hiked down that Englewood Road and found my way over to the dam of the Mirror Reservoir right here. Backtracked up the New England Trail about a 1/4 mile and then found that red trail up South Mountain to that overlook. Came back down South Mountain. So basically I took Englewood Road to this other road and then backtracked eastward on New England Trail. Took the red trail, which isn't shown here, but is on All Trails. Up South Mountain, got the view, came back, and then followed this loop through what's called East Peak. which is also Castle Craig's peak, and followed that yellow marked trail through that area, down the ravine between the two peaks, and then right back up again to the ledges on West Peak, and got a great view for quite a distance as the trail continued northward. Ended up right back where I started from. So I studied this map of the New England Trail and decided to do this loop today because I knew I could spend a long time in the woods without having to set up a shuttle or backtrack, and just do about a half-hour walk on the road, which had no traffic whatsoever, to make the loop complete. So what a great resource to have in New England here. I'm going to be spending more time on it in the future and recording more on it in the future, and be on the lookout for those hikes when they come along.